broke my glasses. He knocked him off. He knocked him off the table and then he sat on them.
My gosh. Yikes.
Dogs are a pain.
Can you see?
Yeah, I've got contacts in, but
Oh, you do.
they're
Oh, okay.
I don't enjoy wearing them, but I'll be wearing them for at least a week while I get new glasses.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I feel
Yeah.
like doing a commercial for the place I order my glasses now, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
you
Do
should
you?
because I need to know. I don't know.
Oh
No.
yeah, I use this online service. I think there are several of them like it, but it's
Okay.
they're so cheap. Like they're so much cheaper than buying
Nice.
them from an optometrist.
Oh, good. Okay, then
Mhm.
I wanted those ones
You,
that they clip on and you can change your look every
Hmm.
time.
Oh,
Those are
that's
what I
cool.
those
Yeah,
are what
that's
I'm like.
cute.
like magnetic frames or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Do you use a prescription, Leslie? Just,
Hmm. I
oh, you
do.
do. You
Yeah, I
send it
don't.
in to the online place and
Hmm.
they make them and do. Okay. Okay. Good to
Yep.
know.
Yeah, and they can do all kinds. Like they can do the bifocal and
Yes.
for
Oh, please send me the link of who you
sunglasses
use
and
because I'm
magnetic and all that.
Yeah.
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 Like transitions even.
Oh,
So,
it's great.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't usually
That's
wear them when I sit at the computer, but I wear them all the time otherwise. So, it's nice to have options.
Yes.
well,
Well,
my
it
doctor
is.
made them weird and so that
Oh, really?
they go so I can see far away but I can't
Hmm.
see nearby, so that's why I sent you the picture that I sent you because I can't actually show it. Looking at my computer is impossible right now.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Oh, we are that age.
I
yeah,
know.
we are. Oh
Well,
gosh.
it's Tuesday, April 22nd, and this live stream is a continuation of a dialogue series that we have had for couple years now between the three of us. I'm Leslie Elliott Boyce, and I'm speaking with Christine Sefein-Wolk and Cari Bartholomew. And please feel free to check our archives if you want to follow more of the conversations that we've been having. We put them under the playlist Sanity Check. And that's what this is. It's our little sanity check. So hopefully um I know there's so much to talk about. I don't even know. We're coming in like just we see each other like once a month and we just start talking about things. But well, Cari, you are following a lot of news in education really closely. And so you usually bring us really interesting stories about what's going on in public
Yeah,
education and in, state run K through 12. So
yeah.
what's going
can
on?
we can we go backwards to you guys did a podcast recently where you were being accused of not being fair minded when it came to your political leanings, even though you don't really
Oh,
have political leanings, right?
I
Yeah.
And
remember.
Yeah. That's interesting. I'll set that one up for you. It's we have had a number of comments that say if you're going to criticize basically what are left wing or Democrat Party supported policies, you are more credible if you're also criticizing right wing policies or right wing political actors. And I don't think that I think that sets up this dichotomous paradigm that I don't feel like makes a lot of sense. It's like I'm just going to supposed to give lip service to everything in order to appear balanced, but I'm just a human being. I'm not forced to take a look at all of those things. And I think the implication that you're not as credible if you're not saying things that people think for them is a little strange. Like we should be able to opine on our own. And if I'm calling out something in social justice, critical social justice theory in education, I don't have to pick some pet peeve on the other side and call that out too to be able to talk about the thing that bothers me over here. So that was what we were discussing.
yeah, and when I was watching it, I just thought, well, this isn't a political channel. There's a difference between talking about policies
Hmm.
and talking about politics. So policies, and this is what I kind of was leaning into, um, that our policies can be corrupt on either side. So with the removal of DEI, so I promise I'm going straight into K-12. With the executive order to remove DEI, I'm seeing corruption on both sides. I'm seeing people who suddenly um, they used to call me and say, "Hey, Cari, we need you to speak about this particular subject regarding DEI, regarding sexually explicit books, whatever it is, right?" And as soon as the pendulum swung, it went so far that now I'm being called the DEI hire, or that I'm pro DEI. And I'm sitting there going, wow, this is really interesting, because my views haven't changed one way or the other. I still believe that it's wrong to alienate anyone, to center around some people and not others. And that's been an interesting thing, where they see anybody who looks like me, quite frankly, as it must be a DEI thing. And what I feel that's extremely different is that some people will stand up for what's right if it benefits them. But once they're no longer part of the equation, they step out of it. And so what I've found is, so much of the work that I've done, and I've said this before, I have so many students, and so many of my students are Caucasian young men, Caucasian preteens and high schoolers. And I stand up for them, even though that doesn't benefit me necessarily in any way, except that I don't want to see anyone being excluded by stupid policy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been an interesting thing to watch. The other thing that has been enlightening is to watch the true meaning of DEI. And I think we all missed this. This will get controversial, but so the diversity, as we become more and more, as we go through these things with immigration, and ultimately, did you notice that we're no longer saying citizen, we are saying resident, right? And so this resident language, the whole goal of DEI, the diversity in DEI, is that there is no such thing as an illegal person on quote unquote stolen land, as they would say. So that's the first part. And then the part about inclusion, what they're doing is using, so many people are freaking out because they're taking away special needs. Well, you have to understand that when you get down to what special needs are, we're talking LGBTQIA plus.
Oh my gosh, really? How is that special needs?
Right, because they've been removed off of the DSM-5 for being a mental disorder, and now it's a disability.
What?
So, yes.
It's a disability?
It's a disability, and so you can't discriminate. So what I watched during one state school board meeting, they were going to discuss removing CRT specifically, and what they did is they paraded out a bunch of special needs kids. And they said, we need this. We need to have inclusive schools for this reason. And they did it right beforehand. And it was actually insulting, I think, probably both sides, right? Because just because you are quote unquote melanated doesn't mean that you need special services and that you're special needs.
That's so manipulative. Wow.
It has been shocking to watch it, but now I'm just, as the executive orders coming out, so many people are saying, well, all we need to do is change the name. And then parents are really up in arms, thinking that they're going to lose special needs supports. And one of the things that I learned from people who work in special ed is that they're no longer allowed to use gendered terms for like nonverbal kids. They are no longer, am I yelling? I feel like I'm yelling. So
no.
Okay, good.
I don't think so.
Okay, good. So they're no longer allowed to use gendered terms for nonverbal kids, for kids who can't use the bathroom on their own. They can't use specific terms that actually help them, because they're not supposed to look at them as individuals, but they're supposed to look at them as part of a collective. So all special needs kids. I was talking to a young man who is very high functioning autistic, and he said, we've been used. We are taught to hate ourselves. Nobody looks at us and says, wow, you're really good at math. We need to put you in math. Instead, we're getting worksheets that are like for elementary school kids. And so there's no differentiation. It's just a constant collectivism. And the end goal really is, there is no illegal on stolen land. And as I sent you that picture, when I watch the UK and I watch what's happening in Canada, so much of that is about pushing Islam into our schools. And that's part of taking over the West. So all of that is what's going on right now.
Oh my gosh. Olivia Maynard. Hey, Olivia, I'm glad you didn't get into that accident yesterday you were talking about, or that incident. Why would it be okay to discriminate against LGBT? I wonder, what are some of your thoughts on that? I'll say some of what I think. First of all, what do you mean by discriminate? I think that if I were to just opine on this for a moment, I'd say keep sexuality out of schools. I mean, keep sexuality teaching and flags and all of that. If you're somebody who's putting sex and sexuality up front in your personality, and people deem you less competent as a person to function in society, is that discrimination? Because I would say that that is a hallmark of somebody whose personality is unbalanced. If you need to put that up front, we used to have this kind of idea that you kept that private, that was a private part of your life, and we don't have to talk about. I don't have to talk about that I'm straight, or how I perceive my own sexuality, or what my preferences are. I don't need to have a conversation with people about that. And I'm not sure. That's just my first thoughts, because we're talking about school here. We're talking about education.
I think we're stealing the terms. So discriminate means something very different than what we think discriminate means.
Mm-hmm.
If I walk into a classroom and my kids are whatever they are, I just treat them as my kids. I just treat them as my students. I don't lean into their sexuality. That's called centering around some at the exclusion of others. Is it discriminating against a Christian child to not say, again, quoting, Christ is king, when a child walks into my class? I don't think that that's discriminating against them. That's not the point of education. That's not the point of the lesson that I'm teaching. So, yeah.
Okay. Sketch Vibes says, I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on Trump's policies on national parks / conservation issues. I know it's outside your normal wheelhouse, but I'm sure all of you enjoy our natural landscapes. I'm not aware of what those policies are. If you want to give us some more information, it'd be interesting to hear what that is. I don't necessarily follow a lot of politics. I see the after effects of a lot of it. My kind of focus has been on K through 12 and higher education, and on counseling, psychology specifically.
The only thing that I've seen is that a lot of people have been moved off their lands. So they've come in and said, we need this land for a green area, or we need this land for whatever. And I wouldn't call this Trump's policy. And then as soon as they're moved off of their lands, they're building huge developments, especially like multi-level or multi-family units. That's the only thing that I've seen. So
Sketch Vibe says national forests being open to logging. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that, because I don't know what the policy was and what it is now. That's pretty specific. If you gave more detail, maybe I'd be able to have an opinion on it. I live in Washington, and you drive through Washington and Oregon, you see lots of places that are been recently logged. And I always find it sad. We drive down the coast, and it's so beautiful, it's rainforest. And then you'll come around a corner, and there'll be like hill after hill that have just been clear cut, and or that were a few years ago, and you can see the little trees starting to grow up again. But we have a lot of what they call sustainable logging that happens in this area. I don't know. It looks, it's always sad to see a forest cut down. I don't know how to feel about that. But then again, we use paper products. I'm not sure. That's a big chunk of the world that not educated enough about to have a smart opinion on. It's just sad when you see it. But the reality is that we use wood, and perhaps they have some way of making it make sense for the environment as well as for people. I would hope so, but I don't know anything about the national park thing. Okay. The huge amounts of layoffs in National Park Service. I encourage you to look into it. I don't know many details either. I'm also from Washington State. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I have family that are federal employees that have been really scared, and nervous with all the shakeups in government. And I have a lot of ambivalence about it. It's, there are real people's lives that are being impacted by what seem like broad stroke policy changes. I don't know how much that is in service of some greater efficiency for America going forward, something that actually works better. Some of the stuff we've seen with USAID, I've appreciated. I've thought, well, that seems great that we're uncovering that. But some of the threats to federal workers have also made me uneasy. I'm not a Trump person, so I'm not sitting here like rah rah Trump with my Trump sign and my MAGA hat. I'm not a Trump person. I'm just kind of watching, and like a lot of people, I have ambivalence, but I'm not feeling super anti what's going on nor pro. I'm just kind of here along for the ride like everybody else.
I'm watching cautiously. I appreciate Doge. I appreciate that they are exposing things. I don't think that sending out emails and asking people to say what they've done is the end all. Like that's something to freak out about. You can send a quick, put it into Chat GPT. This is what I do in a day, make it look good, right? And send it over. So I understand. What I think happens a lot of times, again, this happens with congressmen and legislators and things like that. They don't necessarily know that what they're doing is corrupt or wrong. And so I think that the good ones, first off, I watched the whole Elon Musk and his team interview. It's like almost 2 hours long. And watching them say, we need to protect this country or we won't have anything left for our children. I think this is extremely real. Again, I would like to pull back into having people come here who do not appreciate our country, who either want to destroy it, like they honestly believe death to the West. That to me is a much more pressing situation. And I met a woman, I met her in the fall, and she was a beautiful Islamic woman who believes in Muslim reform or Islamic reform. So it's a Muslim woman who believes in Islamic reform. And she was just saying that they need to have something like the Nicene Creed, where they figure out what's good and keep it and what's not. And I found out, because I was talking to a young woman the other day, said she'd read parts of the Quran and she found it extremely peaceful. Well, I found out just the other day that we're told that Islam is the religion of peace, but it's actually it actually translates to submission. Very, very big, very big difference there. And also in terms of education, what I was trying to figure out was, how in the world do you have people who come here who woke ideology is not compatible? You teach it in schools to their children. And how does that work? And then what I found out was that, the Islamic religion uses what works for woke. Oh, you can't discriminate. Well, then we're going to force our things into the school. So the picture that I sent you guys was a picture of a bunch of English children learning to pray in school. And you can think all you want about what, kids should learn about religion. There's a difference between learning about religion and practicing religion. And we're watching kids post, young people, young pimply teenagers say, I'm now Islamic in the UK. They're just adopting it. Well, of course they are. They're taught that they're toxic. They're taught that to be British is shameful. Western civilization is awful. And then there's now this group of people who are getting out of it. But one of the things I learned, and I think you've had her on your podcast, from the Canadian culture wars woman.
I don't know if people can see that. That's the photo that you sent. Is that coming in?
Yeah.
I can see it. I know what I'm looking at.
British primary
They're
school children
bowing.
required to learn how to pray at a mosque and show respect for Allah. That's pretty shocking.
There is a big
Yeah.
difference. I went to Catholic school my whole entire life from kindergarten through 12th, right? So beginning in college, I didn't. And throughout that course of that time, even though it was a Catholic school, we took courses, especially in high school. There's a specific course I'm thinking of now, which was world religions, and it was a required class. And so you learned about different religions and about different, the roots of, where these religions sprouted from. And even though we were Catholic, there was an open-mindedness to learn about all of these other religions around us. We didn't practice them, though. We did practice going to mass once a month because that was what you agree to if you go to a Catholic school. So we went to it's a religious school. I mean, you already know you're going to go into a place where they're going to have one set of religious beliefs. But I was always impressed with how open-minded they were about exposing us to other religions and it being taught under kind of a historic umbrella rather than this is a good religion or a bad religion or trying to change our practice in any way. So a lot of kids from my class that I could remember took to Buddhism and found very connected to that. It's not though that we all went and started practicing our Buddhist practice in the middle of class. That was something for another time. This is more in terms of learning about the world around you and places
Right.
that are on the other side of the world from where you are and what other people, believe or see. And it was actually very unifying in a lot of ways. So this to me is, it's abhorrent. I mean, I just can't think of another word to put kids into this kind of position where they're now forced to, or in some way, I want to know what their parents think about their kids going and praying to Allah in a mosque, situation during a regular school day. It's different from learning about Muhammad and the Prophet Muhammad and that journey and how the Quran was written, whatever, which I think are important things to learn. But to have them practice in that fashion, if that is not a Muslim school that says in advance, we're a Muslim school and we practice our religion during the school day, then that to me is illegal what they're doing. I don't know if illegal is the word, but it's not right at the very bare minimum. Illegal.
Well, the
It's
issue,
illegal.
the issue is that this is new human rights. So this is how it's getting in, is that this is defined as human rights.
But the whole class is compelled to do it, right? So
yes,
in that way, it isn't a human right. It's another form of compelled speech or compelled practice.
Welcome to the goals of United Nations.
Right.
So
what is the sort of mindset that makes people see Islam as in need of protection? What is that about? Because we don't have that for
hatred for the West. It's hatred for the West.
Is that what it is? But what is like the professors and the teachers and the people in the schools that are seeing this as like almost akin to what you were saying, the special needs, like these people have to have some special carve out. What is that makes
has to be
so
protected?
Yeah, why?
Because the West is the biggest threat, because the West believes in sovereignty, whereas there is no sovereignty when you're part of a collective. So woke and Islam have a lot in common in terms of being able to oppress outgroups. That's perfectly acceptable, right? Like you can, there's no hiding their feelings for the Jewish population.
Yeah.
And again, a sovereign group, a sovereign protected group, you're not supposed to have that. This is a form of imperialism and it's a form of obedience. But one of the most frightening things is that you've got these two competing ideologies. You have a very strong, we follow these rules. And then you have the wokeness of we follow these rules, but under the guise of anything goes. We are so inclusive. What happens when the two groups come together? And I think it was Ilan Hershey Ali, but I'm not sure if that's who it was, the ex-Muslim person. But there was a situation where they were teaching woke ideology in school. Somebody got on Tinder and two people were beheaded. because you are mixing ideologies that
Oh
ultimately
my
do not
God.
work. You use one and you say, oh, well, with that loophole, we can put our stuff in here. And, even I think it's in New Jersey, there's a new town called New Palestine where they got all Muslim people elected. And so now that area is pushed and they're saying, if you're not one of us, you need to get out.
Hmm.
So that's what we're dealing with in the West right now. But the same thing is happening in education under the name of inclusion. One of the things the UK did is got rid of Easter. So they didn't have Easter celebrations in schools.
Really? Oh,
They don't have Easter in Catholic schools because it's not inclusive.
Do you know
But you
what?
can't.
really?
That's so strange to me because when I was growing up, we used to actually do the Seder meals. So, the Seder it's a Jewish tradition, but because there's so much connection between Judaism and Christianity, actually, there's quite a lot. The Torah is the or is the first 5 books of the Bible that the Christians read. So there's this crossover, and we were taught what Passover was. That was part of our, education. But we used to actually practice a Seder meal almost since I was in the first grade until the 8th grade, until I can remember. And it wasn't about, again, because we looked so much at Judaism as being the roots of what turned into Christianity later and what became Christianity later. Those kinds of things were part of what we celebrated or acknowledged. We didn't acknowledge all of the Jewish holidays, but that one in particular we did because we also celebrated Easter. So Passover and Easter were very interlinked in that regard. So it's actually very sad to hear that Catholic schools even are not practicing Easter anymore, because Easter is it's a religious holiday and it's only about one thing, right? It's about, the Christ rising, or whatever you believe is true or
Yes.
false about that. It's about the resurrection. There's nothing else attached to it the way there are attached to Christmas. There's lots of kinds of things attached to what that holiday is. But Easter is in and of itself only a Christian Catholic holiday, the way that some of the Jewish holidays are too. So that's actually very disturbing that a Catholic school wouldn't acknowledge or celebrate Easter, because it's kind of the crux of what that religion believes in. And I'm not trying to say that Catholicism is right or wrong, or I'm not putting any judgment around it. I'm talking about what the traditions they practice are and what going to a Catholic school means. It means you will participate in these traditions.
Right.
That's wow. That's very surprising.
I'm kind of interested in swinging back to something that you were talking about, Cari, when we opened this conversation. And that was the idea that, I guess I used the word swing, you did too, the pendulum kind of swinging and the perception shifting, and even being called a DEI hire, which is really funny in a way, considering your body of work on the problems with DEI and critical social justice theory. And I also just want to acknowledge real quick that the chat is hilarious. It's really interesting. If you follow the live chat, you see these really fascinating little conversations going on. And thank you guys all for contributions. I just want to read a couple of these chats if I can find them, because they've gone on and on since then. Sorry, you guys.
Somebody asked me if I was a DEI hire as a professor.
Oh my gosh.
Interestingly. Yeah, that was a very recent.
Let's see. Scaring C says, uh-oh, just got here and am a Trump person. LOL. Well, welcome. That's right.
Right.
That's great. Sketch Vibes. I appreciate that. I'm not a Trump person either, but also voted for him. I also appreciate Doge. However, I feel that they are going in with an axe when a scalpel would be more appropriate.
That's a really good way to put it.
That is true.
That is such a good way to put it. And I would agree with that, because I do have family members that were affected by the government, cleanup, and it's been quite devastating to a family that within my family group. And I think they could have handled it a little bit differently. This idea of using a scalpel rather than a sledgehammer or whatever the other,
yes,
I think is where I'm at with that. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and if we approach these things super carefully, first off, you have to understand the judiciary system is against Donald Trump
Yes.
overall, right?
Yes, they
And
are.
so everything is set up. There are congressmen right now saying, remember who didn't side with us, because when we get back into power, we're going to basically destroy them. So we have all of these things going on that seem to me like treason from my layman's perspective. And he has really 18 months to make a difference before the next round in the election comes in. And if he does not win, it will be immediately impeachment. It will be an immediate stop of these things. And some of these things are extremely awful. There are things going on, teaching transgenderism in Afghanistan to preschoolers. These are extremely awful things that need to be gutted.
Yes.
In my opinion.
Yes.
Because preschoolers don't understand. So and this idea that there is a group that is so fragile that they must be protected over all things. Today I saw this, I saw a piece of propaganda that was a cartoon of a man pulling out a woman's bikini and looking down and saying, I need to be protected, so you need to look at my genitals. And that's simply not the case. Okay, I'm sorry, but most autogynephilic people do look like their gender at birth. They do. And so it's not real hard to tell. And I'm saying this as somebody who, people who don't like me say I look like a man. So, and that's the reality of that's the reality. The reality is that everybody has to be protected. We are embracing lies. We're swallowing lies left and right. And it's crazy to me that some of the people who will say, you're crazy now, believe the same things 5 years ago. But when you swallow the lie, and I learned this from people who've escaped communism, when you swallow the lie for a certain amount of time, you lose the will to stand for truth. And you hate those people who project truth out in the world.
I'm thinking something that I don't know if I'll be able to eloquently articulate, but something about a society that leans too hard on policy and law instead of self-regulation by people ends up losing a lot of the nuance that's important in human interaction. Like if we have a policy that says, let's say one side of it might be only biological females are allowed in female restrooms, full stop, then you get things like that cartoon where there's people who are sort of androgynous looking and they feel like I can remember my mom was really sensitive because she was tall. She was a really pretty woman, but as she aged and she was older and she was not as super feminine, and she was really a tall woman. She felt like she might get mistaken for a trans woman in the bathroom. I mean, this was kind of like an insecurity she shared with me. She was always sensitive about being taller than other women. It was not a point of confidence for her. It was a point of embarrassment. And so you might have women who are scared, as that kind of that cartoon exemplifies, that they're going to be subject to skepticism and that they won't feel like they fit in. And that's not cool. And then on the other end of the spectrum, if you have a policy that says anybody who identifies as a woman should be able to use a woman's bathroom, then you have just some schmo out there who isn't even trans. I mean, like this, I'm just using far ends of the spectrum, who just says, yeah, I'm a woman, and he can just go in there. And if he says he's a woman, then you have to take his word for it.
Right.
So the reality is that there's people on all ends of that are impacted by policy. And if I wonder if this is why I said I might have trouble articulating this. This is when we set out anti-discrimination policies, we're reducing the ability of people to make case-by-case determinations. There might be someone out there, like you said, most autogynephilic trans women don't really pass. You can spot this person, they stand out, they don't look like a woman, and there's some discomfort with that. And that's true. I see that. But then you do have some that maybe do. Like
You,
I mean, look at Blair White, somebody like
right.
that who passes quite well, and you would probably not blink if you saw her walk into a bathroom, her, him, however you want to use the pronouns. But the individual owner of a business, at the end of the day, I wonder if we've gotten so far away from self-determination, we're all bound by these laws and policies that take away our freedom to make those kinds of choices to govern the nuances of human interaction and behavior. And I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I can articulate my thoughts either very well about this, but I feel that for me personally, there needs to be a sense of, if we're going to have policy, there needs to be a sense of protectiveness, I don't know, or protections around them. My example here, and I've shared this before, is using the same bathroom, that was for anybody who identified as female versus using it with, that was with female, just being a female bathroom. Is I had somebody come into the bathroom who was very intimidating to me, a very tall man who was 6'3", 6'4", very large, and he was wearing a tutu and combat boots, and came in, and it was nighttime. I was alone in there, and I felt incredibly uncomfortable and unprotected in that moment. We also had a shower in that bathroom, so you could go in there and shower. And sometimes people would go in there and do who knows what in the showers, and there weren't a lot of protections in place. I don't ask for a lot of protections. I just want a woman's space to be a woman's space.
Mhm.
And by woman's space, I mean the bathroom. I'm not talking about the classroom or whatever, workplace, any of those
Right.
other places. But I want to know at the end of the day, it's interesting because my husband, a friend of his daughter is going to college, and they're doing this tour looking at all the schools that she got accepted to. And he is extremely progressive. He's very left wing, very progressive, very obvious about that, just in his policies and whatnot. He walked in to the men's bathroom at this campus and saw tampons in there, and immediately said, "You're not going to the school." See, it's one thing when these policies are just written and people are pro or against or whatever, and it's something different when it's your personal experience and this policy personally affects you. He could give two rats rear ends, okay, two craps about any of this stuff being taught in schools, doesn't care. But the minute it was his daughter, who was then in a space that he didn't feel was protected, the bathroom, well, I guess it would be, well, anyway, that was where it became his own problem. The same thing for me, with that particular policy. It's that when it affected my own feeling of safety, I was very upset by that. And I felt somewhat, I don't know if disadvantaged, that's maybe not the word, but vulnerable in a way that I did not want to be, at my place of employment. That to me is supposed to be a protected space for me as a woman with female body parts. Maybe I was having my menstrual cycle at that time and wanted to go and get a tampon, for 25 cents. And there's a guy standing there who's 6'3" wearing a tutu. And I don't think it's his business to know that it's my time of the month. That's not what happened. I'm giving an example of how I might have felt. So I
Mhm.
have this hard, it's a balance between too much policy that ignores the nuance and not enough policy for some spaces that should be protected.
Okay. So what I wonder, I guess my issue is with the idea of policy. Because if everything that we do in American life is governed by policy, then the whole country just becomes the arm of the state. And we saw that with
Yes.
COVID when
Yes.
all of a
100%.
sudden, all of a sudden, the checkout girl was the law enforcement officer to tell you that you couldn't buy that
Yes.
thing because you weren't wearing a piece of paper on your face that the
I
government
agree with
said you
that.
needed to wear. And so I feel like the idea of policy is it's kind of like it's like kind of like a legal bypass for responsibility for the individual. And if we have competing policies that we're throwing at each other, you know, we're always referring to some outside authority to make our decision instead of, and maybe this is kind of a, and I know that there's a lot of contradiction. I'm just kind of working this through in my head and
Sure.
working it through out loud with you guys, but this is maybe a market argument for free market, that if you have one gym, let's say, that says we have an inclusive policy, so you can use whatever dressing room you want to use. We don't police that biological male female thing. Then you're going to have some people who think that that's great and they're going to go to that gym, and other people are like, heck no. And then you have another gym that's really strict and says, you know, men in the men's room, women in the women's room, no exceptions. And you're going to have people that want to go to that place, and then let the market decide who's more successful. And buyer beware. And are we entitled as people to go into anybody else's privately run business and tell them how they're supposed to run? And I see this being kind of the outcomes are not great for either side when we have Big Daddy State telling everybody how they can manage their businesses.
I agree with that.
But
I
that's
agree
the
with
whole
that.
goal.
And I agree with that wholeheartedly. So I do want to make that point, because I'm not arguing for policy, but what I am arguing is for a feeling of safety. It's like police. Why are there police? Why do we have cops to begin with? Well, you can list a million things that cops do that are evil, horrible, wrong, that infringe on freedom, infringe on personal rights, infringe on safety. We've seen cops do miserable things to people and need to be jailed themselves, etc. At the same time, there's some reason that they're supposed to be, you know, there to create some level of safety for us. So I want to be really clear. I did not agree with the COVID policies. I thought that was big state, big daddy state coming in, grabbing you, you know, by the arm and sitting you down and saying you're going to do what you're told. At the same time, I felt that if something had happened to me in that bathroom with that man that went in, it would have been at my own, what's the word? My own well, that was your own decision to go in there. So if something happens to you, you know that you're taking a risk by going into an all gendered protected space.
Yeah. But if he did something to you, and this is and I don't mean to be antagonistic to your point, but I'm just trying to play it out logically.
Oh, of course.
This is one of the things with like a hate crime, right? It's the crime is already in the definition. There's a crime already happening. If somebody were to assault you in that place,
yes,
and if that place of business has a policy against whatever, you know, then the person could be civilly charged for violating the place's policy, because there's kind of an implied contract when they walk in the door that they're going to go into the correct restroom or whatever it is. But there's also a criminal charge that could be brought against somebody if they actually do assault. I don't know. I'm just wondering, like, do you need the whole state to agree? Do we need consensus for everything? And that's kind of, I guess what I'm getting at is like, why do we need consensus for everything that governs our lives?
I think it depends on what it is. I think there's a couple of things that are very simple. If you are a female, go to a female bathroom. If you're a male, just go to the male bathroom. I think what's complicating all of this is that we're trying to do that and use it to apply to every single facet of your life. Well, every single institution.
And both sides have their outlier that they want to bring trot out, you know? Both sides, like the people who are arguing for women's bathrooms to be biologically female only, like they trot out the examples that do exist of men who have violated women's bodies and their privacy and their safety in the name of, you know, gender in these bathrooms. You see these rapes in women's prisons and things like that go on. Absolutely. So they trot out this outlier example, or maybe it's not even an outlier. I don't know. This percentage, and this is their schema that they point to. And the other side trots out this like the small or very vulnerable and extraordinary feminine, you know, looking trans woman to say, would you want her in the men's restroom, that would be,
Mhm.
so we both are pointing at a different extreme as we
Mhm.
try to make this argument. And you're arguing from the tail ends of the distribution.
Mhm. No, I can see that. I can see that. I think that, there's an overall structure to kind of law and order and safety that needs to be there in order to keep people somewhat, because not people aren't going to be responsible. And I don't think it's a free pass if you're not a responsible citizen that you get to just attack and do whatever to other citizens. We have to have, and we do have protections and laws for those things. But I think the problem is it's this extreme one, the pendulum swing is too extreme on both sides. And that's where everything then starts to become about policy, or nothing is about policy. And I don't think that one side or the other side of this is the answer. There's some kind of middle moderate. I mean, it's your channel's called the radical center. To me, it's like it's radical to even be somebody who considers themselves a centrist in some way. That's a radical concept this day and age. So I mean, I think there's the pendulums are back and forth and they're going too far on both ends, whether it's right, left, whatever it is. Where is this middle ground here that is reasonable, where reasonable protections are there that are reasonable for the average person? Sorry, Cari, you probably wanted to speak for a while.
Oh, Cari, you got no
Oh my
volume.
God, we can't hear you. Uh-oh.
We lost you. Nope.
Can't hear you.
No. Try again. Maybe log in and out. I'll let you back in the room. Well, that's very interesting. The idea of not having this reasonable middle ground. And what I kind of come back to over and over again is the idea that scale is a major factor in all of this. If you're trying to please everyone or mitigate for every potential outcome, eventually you're just sitting in a padded room because,
yes, 100%.
All right, let's see if she comes back in.
Okay.
All right. Got volume? Oh, darn.
Oh no.
Still no.
You know
Still
what?
no.
Are your earpods connecting to your phone at the same time? Mine do that sometimes. I have to turn the Bluetooth off the phone. They sometimes compete, and then so it goes off my computer. I don't know if that makes any sense.
All right. So, yeah, JC Daedalus, the collector, says there is no way to reason with the unreasonable psychotic left. Well, yeah, I think that there's no way to reason with people who are behaving in a way that's inherently unreasonable, whether they're on the left or the right. And there's some, I mean, are we doing too much? No, not yet, Cari. No audio. Are we doing too much to try to get everybody's buy-in? We can set policy. If we want to go back to policy should be as minimal as possible, I think. And what we end up with is like, I've wondered a lot how much as we try to become a really secular and really inclusive and diverse culture, we end up leaning on a legal code in place of what would have been a moral and religious code. And so we have this legalistic morality that says everything is fine as long as everybody consents.
Yes.
And what does that do to us?
Yes. That's problematic. Trying to have this idea of everybody needs to be on board in order for some policy to pass through. Everybody's got to be happy. That's never going to happen. There's always going to be the fringe in multiple areas. So I think the idea of being reasonable. I mean, yes, the psychotic left, but the psychotic right isn't going to be reasonable either. The psychotic, up, down, middle, it doesn't matter. Anything that's psychotic isn't going to be reasonable. Those voices then maybe are not the ones that should be determining how inclusive we are, or or what policy needs to be put in place to protect X, Y, and Z, and all of these other things that are irrational. But who makes those decisions? That would be my question, is who would be in charge of being the reasonable mind that makes the reasonable decisions regarding reasonable policy? I don't know. I mean, that's hypothetical. I have no idea.
Did I hear something?
Oh,
It's not great, but it's better than not hearing you at all.
go ahead.
Jonathan says, Cari, you don't look like a man, clearly and beautifully a woman. So even
Oh,
if you just
of
have to
course.
sit there quietly, you still be beautiful.
Oh, please.
JC
No.
Daedalus sent a super chat. Thank you very much, JC, and says the slippery slope fallacy is suddenly recognized as a slippery slope fact. Will you say a little bit more about that? I'm not sure what you're referring to. Thank you so much for the super chat.
So you guys, can I try? I don't know if it's gonna
Yes,
work.
Yeah, it's a
we
little
can hear
garbly,
you.
but it's better than nothing.
I'm
Okay.
so sorry about sound. I need my teenager here.
Oh,
I
Cari,
can, yes.
where is that coming from? Okay, there we go. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can
Yes.
now. There was some interference for a second. Go for it.
Okay. All right. I think that this is a massive test, just like COVID was a massive test. Will we continue to make excuses for things that are just simply not true? Because that's what we're doing. Even when we're having these conversations and we are trying to justify things that simply are not true. Autogynephilia is a mental disorder. There are also people who just simply enjoy humiliating women. That's a fact. And when we pretend that it's not because we are afraid that we are going to trigger someone or we're going to get attacked in the comments or anything else, we begin to swallow the lie. Again, I've done so much work. My body of work is with people who've escaped communism. I've done so much work with people who are like, I just don't say the truth. I have people who call me regularly and say, Cari, will you get this out there? I can't. I could potentially lose my job.
Yes.
You know, and the more and more that people have, the more they're afraid to lose. But what we most need to be afraid of losing is our ability to live in reality. Because this is, in my opinion, very much a test. How far is the wheel when those people that are the defenders of truth, that will have the conversations that other people are afraid to have, still go, oh, but let's find a reason why we justify this over here. Because some things shouldn't be justified. There's some things that are simply true and some things that are not. And I feel terrible for those people who deal with gender confusion. But I think we should be honest and say how much of it comes from what we're watching on the computers? How much of it comes from TikTok? Because just scientifically speaking, if a country doesn't use TikTok, if they limit social media for their children, they don't have the same problems we do. But we don't talk about that. Instead, we go, how can we be as balanced and as fair as possible when there's not a fairness in this? Our children are being targeted and abused.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think if we would just go back to letting people do what they will without infringing on other people to a great extent, police your own community, reinforce your own values through the connections and the relationships that you have with other people that you're actually connected with love, and stop interfering so much. Maybe this,
Yes.
because I see this gender thing that's blowing up. Who knows what all the factors are that play into it, but some of the factors are clearly educational decisions being pushed through by big entities like UNESCO, who have decided that for all children, it's really important for them to explore gender and to be told as early as possible and as often as possible that they're not bound to this male-female paradigm, so they can do whatever they want.
I mean,
And that's direct interference with other people. That is like social engineering.
Big time.
And, if you weren't interfering so much with the way children perceive their own development, we
in Colorado,
could just accept that some people will still have issues, but
Colorado
approach it differently.
To take parents' rights away. If you do not affirm your child that is getting this regularly in school daily, if you don't affirm your child, you can lose custody of your child just like that.
Yes, you can lose custody in California if you don't use if you refuse to use their pronouns, the pronouns that they've decided that they are These are very real outcomes, and it is absolutely terrifying because we don't know what this generation that's getting all of this in school and that's getting all of this pushed through social media, we don't know what's going to happen in 20 years from now when they've become adults and are in positions, to be in, in their communities and be in leadership roles. We don't know what that's going to look like, because this is so mentally, this is a gigantic experiment, it almost feels like, where these kids are being mentally and physically abused by all of this incoming. We don't know what they're going to look like in 20 years from now. I went to school board meetings constantly and pushed back against COVID restrictions and pushed back against all this stuff. I don't have children. People are like, you don't have kids, why do you care? Because I have to live in the same community and environment that these kids who are going to become adults one day live in as well. So I am concerned about the children in my community and the children
Right.
around me, what they're learning and who they're going to become as a result of this. And we don't know what the outcome is going to be yet. That's frightening. We've never seen
Well, and I
anything
love
like
that you
this
said
before.
leaders. I love that you said leaders, because I'm watching more and more of our elected officials that are these activists. More and more of them are standing up and they're saying these things, and you're just like, you are not a moral and virtuous person. And that's a whole nother conversation of what makes a moral and virtuous
Sure.
person. But when you are flat out saying people must swallow the lies or lose their children, you are not a moral or virtuous person. And our founding fathers specifically said America cannot exist without moral and virtuous leaders. So the fact that we're in this place where we are constantly electing whoever is the most popular on social media is frightening. It is frightening. You guys, I see an AOC Jasmine Crockett ticket in the future.
Yes.
And oh my gosh, can I please move?
And it's not, and that's not a joke either. She was taken as the biggest joke ever, but that's no longer the case.
No,
She's
no.
actually a potential
Yeah,
candidate.
which
That's
is,
right.
I mean, and this is what happens when we continuously teach our children to no longer care about logic. And that's why we have to double down on logic. I cry at theater all the time. I saw 3 plays in the last month and I cried all the time. I'm an empathetic, like emotional person. You still have to lean into logic. You still have to go, this is true, this is not. This is scientifically proven. It's the only way that X is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do that, because if we don't, we will find ourselves in a place where we can't speak truth. We were so close to that, to come full circle with the whole people saying that this guy's a dictator, and the last 4 years somehow weren't. We are being conditioned to deny truth for whatever reason.
The Dale Wardens says there should be one goal in life, and that's to raise your children to be good parents. There's nothing else. That's nice. I think it's a nice thought. I think there's a little bit, there's a snake eating its tail there though, because what is the substance of that? So I would say, I don't know, let's exploring and riffing off of that. I think teaching your kids to love and to be loved, to know what it's like to love and be loved. And part of loving is respect.
You just got yourself in all sorts of words there, right? Because love is defined new. The new progressive love is something different than many people would consider love.
Right.
Well, what would you define love as? What is love?
Good question.
I mean, you're coming back, for me, you're coming back to my Christian roots. Okay, so I define, I guess I define love as what would God do, but I don't define love as God. So I say God is love, but not love is God. So, and I think that's the thing, is that love has been, and it's just another word that's been weaponized.
But what is it?
Well, some people would say that love is empathy. Love is what makes you feel good. Love is simply, kumbaya all the time. I believe love calls us higher.
But when you say I love you to your son, What does that word mean in that sentence?
I'm completely dedicated to you. I want to help you grow to be the very best person you can be, become a contributing member of society. And even if you don't, I'll still be there. I think that part of love is commitment, but I also think it's an investment.
Sketch Vibes says, willing the good of the other. That's nice
Yes,
too.
I like that.
The Collector, JC Daedalus, says, love is the spirit of God in our souls, given to us by God. And yeah, Christine, what is love?
Putting somebody else's, I guess, I don't know, this may sound a little codependent. I don't know what it sounds like, but I'll put, putting somebody's needs ahead of my own in order for them to thrive, in order for them to feel as though they matter. I don't know. I got to talk this out to kind of get to where I'm going with it. But I mean, when I say I love you to my husband, I honor and respect the person that he is. I honor and respect the value that he holds in my life and in the world. I value how he treats me. It's a mutual two-way street. I don't love somebody who doesn't love me back. So there's that component. There's a mutual respect for each other. I love how much, he contributes to my life. And I love contributing to his, and I trust that I am contributing something really positive and something that hopefully makes him feel like an important person in the world. I mean, one person can't be all of that for somebody, but I think you have to be, but everybody needs a little bit of that from somebody in order to thrive. And I think that's the case. There are definitely times where I put his needs ahead of my own because in that moment, his needs mattered than my own. And there are times when he's put mine ahead of his own because in those moments, my needs mattered than his own at that time. So I think it's being able to recognize that too in a kind of a mutual way. It's different with kids, right? Because your relationship is not an equal partnership when you're with children. There's an authoritarian kind of structure. The parent is the authority with the child. So I think that love relationship looks different. I would define it differently. And I also don't have kids. So, for me, the parental love closest for me is with my nephews, but even that is, I think, miles and miles away from what it's like to actually parent your child and have love for your child. Like actually telling your child, I love you means so much more than auntie saying it. It means more coming from mom and dad.
It's interesting how hard it is to define something that we talk about all the time
All
that
the time.
we've known our whole lives. And here's some thoughts from the chat. Jonathan says, love includes truth and is ultimately sourced from our creator. Notes from the Path says, willing the good of the other, St. Thomas Aquinas. Let's see.
What about greater
Love is,
Go
Green
ahead.
Pill Theory says, love is positive energy.
I like that.
I think if I'm thinking about love, I'm thinking that the word respect is a part of that, but not respect as in looking up to, but like the etymological definition of the word respect, which would be to look back at. So it's to recognize the distance between things and to sort of to really see someone, see them, witness them, and feel that goodwill and that gratitude that this exists. I mean, I can think of loving a beautiful, like I love the valley that I drive through when I have to drive anywhere from the town we live in. There's this big wide open valley and you can see it framed on all sides by foothills and mountains and the two mountain ranges that surround us. And this valley is just so beautiful. And I just feel like my whole chest just fills up, my heart fills up with this love for this. And it's kind of a love of what the beauty of nature, a love of God, a love of just the gift that we've been given. And I feel a similar feeling when I look at like my children and and my husband and the people in my life, my friends, just, you see these beings and you can be filled with the gratitude that you get to do this. You get to see and be in this time, in this space with these beings. And I guess I think that that's how I would describe love. But I also really like the Sketch Vibes says love is something you do. It's not just a feeling. And Running Bear says
Yes.
love is action. And I had this
Action. It's a choice.
yeah, I had a friend when I was 20, and I was a new mom, and she was 10 years older than me, and she had two kids that were the same. She had had her kids at the same ages. I think I was going to have my second, and I had one, and her kids were spaced the same. And I looked up to her so much because it was like, you're living what I hope can be an outcome for me, because it was kind of scary to be a young mom, and I was seeing her being really just a wonderful mother. She shared something with me that I thought was really great. And it was in her difficult times with her husband, she would remember that love is a verb. And she would say that love is a verb. So when you're not feeling love, you're not filled up with that feeling, you enact love and you keep
give.
doing it. And then the feeling will come back to you and you'll feel it again. But
Yes.
I kind of think of it as being a dual thing. It's both that affective quality, but also the action piece.
The
I think
action
that
piece is so important. And I think that's dismissed a lot, but I think it's really important to have that piece as well. And I think believing that it's a choice to love every day.
so. I think that greater love hath no man than this, and he would lay down his life for his friends. That's almost easy, compared to being willing to lay down your life for your enemies too. The problem is that all of these descriptions can be used against you. They can be weaponized. So I think that love has to be a two-way street. Nobody, when people walk up to you and say, "You're not loving if you don't do what I want," that's not love. That's abuse. And I think that that's what we get caught up in oftentimes is, and I think we also do that. You know, I've been married for almost 20 years this year. And we also do that. Like, especially when you're young and in a relationship, oftentimes you're like, you know, what can you do for me? What can you do for me? And it has to grow with time. But I do think that ultimately being willing to stand up and do what's right, even for the people who hate you, I think that's actual love is when you have it for your enemies, when you don't wish. And that's the thing that I find so hard about all of the us versus themness. So much of like what I try to do, I'm trying to do to protect the children of progressives as well as I am the children of conservatives, right? And you get called names and you get people wishing violence on you and et cetera, et cetera. And you still do it anyways, because that's what real love is. Love for mankind is not just bending over backwards and saying, okay, if it makes you feel good, I'll do that.
You know, I have a thought that I've been kind of mulling on for a while around this. And I think that one of the temptations that we're offered so much right now with our extreme connectivity and all the news and all the information that we have about how things are being done in other places, we have a temptation that we have to figure out how to grapple with, to over nurture, to over correct for other people. And I think that a lot of what we're seeing in the social justice movement is people, the flip side, or not the flip side, but just farther down the spectrum from nurture is control. And so once you start to take control of someone else's outcomes or try to coerce them into doing things the way that you think they should be done, even if that's out of a benevolent motivation, which I think it usually is, you have now curtailed or limited that person's own growth and agency. So I think one of the things that we have a real temptation towards, that we have to wrestle with, is to take care of things that aren't ours to take care of. And I guess I come back to the idea that ultimately we're really only in control of one person, and that's ourself. And to work on that first and foremost. I guess it's a version of Jordan Peterson's Clean Your Room. So that's where I'm at right now.
Mm.
I had one I wanted to read here. Notes from the path. Love is sourced from God's grace, boundless, unending, eternal outflow. We are more or less transparent to it. We allow it to move through us. It is intrinsic and natural.
Mm.
And yeah, there's a lot of really good comments in here. Thank you guys all for these thoughts. And yeah, so I know we're a little bit over time. Any final thoughts, Cari and Christine?
No, I really value the time that we spend together having these conversations and being able to have different points of view. And I think still at the same time, have a connection to truth and have a connection to the seeking of truth and this pursuit of a more sane world for us, for our kids, for the people we love. And I really just value that and I'm just feeling very honored and privileged today to be a part of these conversations with you both, and of course with the other people that are watching on the stream. And I like the different points of view. It gives me a lot to think about. So I'm, I guess, feeling grateful today.
Yeah, I think the same thing. Really listening to other people's point of view and being able to put out something that makes people think about love in a time of so much division and hatred, I think is it's a special gift to be able to do this. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you all for joining us in the chat. You two are two of my favorite people that I've never met in person. And I always appreciate this chance to get together. And Cari, what do you have going on that you want to plug? Anything on your channel that you want to invite people to directly?
No, I'm so ridiculously busy in the real world right now. So yeah. Oh, I guess I'm going to start. I just got asked to teach critical thinking, which I'm calling analytical thinking because I don't want people to fall into together
Right.
to high schoolers next year. So, pray that I have the brain to be able to figure that out and to connect with these kids because they're a next generation of voters.
Well, I think you're an excellent person to be teaching that. And I like that little semantic shift in order to avoid the critical trap.
Yeah.
Excellent. Right. Awesome. And you, Christine, anything going on that you want to point people to?
Just criticaltherapyantidote.org. We're still plugging away and growing, and we're going to start teaching some skills-based courses for therapists, especially the entry-level ones who are not getting those kinds of classes or getting those kinds of skill training in the school programs that they're in. There's a real need and lack of that. And so we're in the process now of starting that arm of the organization. So hopefully that will be up and running soon.
That's wonderful. So needed. All right, everyone, have a great week,
You
and
too.
we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.